But Joe and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
Well, happy Friday, everybody. You did it. The weekend is here. We've had a lot of sports action come through this weekend, some positive, some not so positive, and we've got a lot to look forward to when it comes to the Buffs, the Broncos, and beyond. And with me to discuss it today is the one and only Jake Shapiro, who was in the building last night for what I described as a thrashing by the Oklahoma City Thunder to the Denver Nuggets at home. Jake, how are you?
I'm good. Tomorrow is a great day in sports. We've got Major League Baseball. We've got everything going on. I cannot wait for the World Series tonight.
Me neither.
We've got the Rapids playing tomorrow in a playoff game. And then of course the Buffs. And the Nuggets play tomorrow too again. So I'm really excited. And the Avs looked great last night. So I'm trying to be as positive as I can be, Richie, before we start talking about some other stuff.
Yeah, well, that's the mindset you have to put yourself in, because as I was watching that game on TV, and I'm sure it was only amplified by you who was in the building, that was a tough one. There really didn't feel like, even when there were positives to glean, it just looked like everything that we thought might be an issue for the Nuggets with the way they handled their offseason and the way they're constructed manifested itself against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to see. And that was my headline on denversports.com, is expected issues plague Nuggets in opening night loss. Like, everything that we thought the Nuggets were going to struggle with because of the last two off seasons and everything they've lost was apparent in their loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And that was pretty telling and pretty devastating. They missed Jeff Green's ability to come and stabilize things off the bench. They missed Bruce Brown as the secondary ball handler. They missed Contavious Caldwell-Pope's spacing and shooting. They missed the Jamal Murray of past, and maybe he'll get there again. I'm not that worried about Jamal. That's a whole other thing. And they missed maybe the hunger that they had for a title 2 years ago. They missed a lot of different things. And, the funniest part is the biggest change, at least on surface level to casual fans, is Christian Brown is now starting for KCP. Christian Brown was the second best player on the team last night.
I agree.
Jokic. Christian was not the problem. And It's funny to say, when primarily we'll probably have this conversation about spacing, and Christian was hesitant to shoot and did not want to shoot at times and, was not being guarded. Christian found a way to make himself a threat on offense while not shooting. He was not the problem spacing wise, but all the other things that the Nuggets did this offseason, and including getting Christian off the bench into the starting lineup, really impacted them against who is going to probably be the best team in the West.
Yeah, I mean, I'll second what you said about Christian Brown. I mean, this was a guy that was putting up 15-plus points in the NBA Finals, at one point as a rookie. And so I think that while there were questions about could he fill that void as the fifth starter alongside the core four and replace some of the things that KCP brought to that starting lineup, yes, but I think that an underrated element of what you just alluded there is that you took Christian Brown off the bench unit, and he was kind of a stabilizing force or a spark plug on that bench unit where they were still struggling to win the non-Jokic minutes and things like that. So now you take that away and you replace it with the pieces that they have, which by and large were not that impressive. And I'll give the Nuggets, not, credit, or I'll at least acknowledge that, in my opinion, when you watch the Oklahoma City Thunder, I think you're watching the future of the Western Conference and a potential dynasty team in the making. When you look at their youth, their connectivity, the way that they space the floor. When I was watching them, especially offensively, it reminded me of how the Nuggets looked on the title run. The way that they were able to distribute the ball, they were moving the ball so quickly, and it felt so fluid and easy and natural, and they're finding the backdoor cuts. They're popping out to open threes, and they're coming from everywhere. I mean, Chet Holmgren is conceding about 70 pounds to Nikola Jokic, and the way he was moving in the paint, it looked effortless at times.
Oh, and by the way, they were missing two of their key rotation players in Isaiah Hartenstein and Jalen Williams last night. Oh, and by the way, they might have the first pick in the NBA draft because of the rights that they have. So even if they win the title this year, they might be picking the number one pick, which is pretty insane. So yeah, I echo your thoughts on potential dynasty here in Oklahoma City. I think that, comparisons to the early versions of the Nuggets, probably fair in terms of the way they play stylistically. But the one difference is that they bring waves at you off the bench. The Nuggets have always struggled without Jokic on the floor. they're so deep. And, they've got guys, their 13th, 12th guy, Kendrick Williams, would be playing for the Denver Nuggets. No doubt about it. And that's what I'll tell you. I'm saying all these things out of one side of my mouth about how good the Thunder are, but I'll say this out of the other side. The Nuggets won the starter minutes by 8 points if you play it by 100 possessions. So the Nuggets starters with CB were not the problem. And that's on a night where Jamal and Michael could not shoot. So I'm not that concerned about the starting five. That is not my concern. I think CB's fine there. That is fine. And come playoff time, when those guys are playing 35, 40 minutes a night, that's going to be okay. But you cannot lose the bench minutes starred by former MVP Russell Westbrook by 25 points per 100 possessions. Russ was a negative 24 and 21 minutes of action. He was letting the other team score 1 point more than he and the Nuggets did every minute he was out on the floor. That is just not sustainable. And you will lose every single game playing like that. And that's all we've asked the entire Nikola Jokic era, Richie. It's just, we don't even need it to be positive. We just need it to be not a death.
Just tread water.
And somehow it got worse, at least on night one. I'm not surprised, because I've been saying, and I said it on air yesterday on 104 Through the Fan, that Russ was the worst player in the NBA and one of the worst acquisitions the Nuggets could have made this offseason. Yep. I'm not saying I've been proven right because it was one game, but that's what I was seeing when I said those words. Russ had the highest usage rate on the Nuggets last night. He shot 5, I think maybe even 6 threes, and he's the worst three-point shooter in the history of the NBA for a volume shooter. Everything that you didn't want Russ to be, Russ was on night one, while at the same time, your younger players in Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson didn't really step up. Peyton had some nice athletic moments. Julian looked lost, and Dario Saric did not look like a valued contributor at all. So there's going to be some things the Nuggets need to rethink. Michael Malone said after the game that he really liked Jamal Murray playing with Russell Westbrook. I think that's a horrible idea. So we're going to have to live through that experiment for at least a month here before Michael Malone figures out what the rest of us probably already know. So this is going to be a rough start to the season. I've said it over and over that it's going to be up and down for a while because the Nuggets are trying to figure out a lot of things, but that's not necessarily an indictment on their future. But if their future looks like last night, they're not going anywhere. They know that as well.
Yeah, I think that, I'll give Zach Bye all the credit in the world with the addition of Russell Westbrook. He said that, while Brody brings certain intangibles as a locker room presence, and he has an intensity about him and a vocal element that the Nuggets by and large have been missing, he's the worst 3-point volume shooter arguably in NBA history. And adding
not arguably, Richie. Yeah, he's statistically the worst 3-point shooter that has taken over 2003s in NBA history.
And adding that to a team that desperately needs more volume and production from beyond the arc is not a recipe for success. And that's what it looked like. I mean, and it's already been an element of Michael Porter Jr.'s game that when he's on and he's hitting from beyond the arc, he looks unstoppable. He's got that Kevin Durant-esque mismatch to him, but when he's not, and he still hasn't found that plateau, that line where he can keep it consistent on a night-to-night basis. But I'll give him this. He looks massive. He looks so much stronger. So all that work that he's put in the offseason, and if he's able to use that to potentially develop another element to his game where he's more aggressive around the rim and he can be a little bit more stout defensively as well, I think that there's a chance that they could maybe get some production in ways that they hadn't before. But I'll agree with you. It was sad watching them shoot. I think when I was watching in the second half, I think midway through the third quarter, or late in the third quarter, they were like 4 for 22.
So going into the fourth quarter, they were shooting, I think, 4 for 19 or something. They were 18% from 3, and they hit 4 threes. Even worse than that, they hit a 3 right away to start the game, Nikola Jokic, right? Michael Porter Jr. hits a 3 a couple of minutes later at the early portion of the first quarter. So the Nuggets hit 2 threes from midway through the first quarter until the end of the third quarter. There was no reason to even guard them from out there. And by the way, the Thunder only shot 22% from 3.
Yeah, they were bad too.
Right. So this could have been way worse on the final line. And the thing is, Richie, we said over and over early on in the Nikola Jokic years, all he needs is some 3-point shooting and defense around him. He has the defense. The Thunder only scored 102 points or less 7 times last year in their 82 games. The Nuggets defense was really good last night. So their defense was good. Their rebounding, they were +8 on the board count, led by Michael Porter Jr., Nikola Jokic, and Christian Brown. They did great there. So 2 aspects of their game were phenomenal, and yet they felt out of the game from the moment the thing flipped early on in the first quarter. So I don't know how to evaluate this completely because there were some real positive signs, but at the same time, they felt completely out of the game the entire time. So is it like, wow, if they didn't, which side do you want to read into it,
Yeah, and I think it's fair because, listen, I do subscribe to, when it comes to just about everything but the NFL, I subscribe to, like, hey, it's game 1 of 82. Let's not overreact and all of that. But I think it's important to acknowledge some of the scary or potential red flags that we're seeing in game 1, because if you look up in game 35 and you're still experiencing some of those things, it's no longer just an overreaction to game 1. And I have a feeling that some of the issues that we saw tonight are not going away anytime soon and may require some tweaking, either from a coaching standpoint or an acquisition standpoint of some nature, before we can really remedy it, if they can be remedied at all. That being said,
but there really aren't any moves left, Richie. That's the
right.
problem. They don't have draft picks. They don't have tradable salaries. Like, this is the team.
That's a fair point. I will say, I think we were ready to pull some parachutes and ring some alarms when it came to the Avs, who started 0-4, but have now won 4 straight. So I'm not going to say that the Nuggets aren't going to be, a playoff contending team at the end of the season and all that. But I do think that we need to wrap our heads around the fact that this team they got worse on paper in a lot of people's mind, and they may not have gotten much better on the court, when we're into game 60, 70, and 80. That being said, with the Avs, they've won 4 straight, and 3 of those have come on the glove of Justus Annunen, who I assume is going to continue getting some starts here. And we may, the chirping and the conversations we had early on about a potential goalie controversy or competition, I think are very real. And I think you're hearing that shift when it comes to Jared Bednar. What have you thought of Justus Annunen's time between the pipes? And do you think they should continue to roll with him going forward and leave Georgie where he's at?
I'm not ready to say he's going to be the number 1 goalie come game 1 of the playoffs. But I think you have to keep playing Justus Annunen until the wheels fall off. And I'm not sure that the wheels are going to fall off, Richie, because this was a highly touted prospect. We started hearing people talk about Annunen before the cup run, even with this is the goalie of the future. And then they still went out and got Georgiev because Justus wasn't ready. So was Georgiev, really just a stopgap until Justus was ready, and now Justus is ready? Maybe this was the plan all along. But the thing is, Richie, about the Avs, they started 0-4 in a lot of home games. They've won, 4 games in a row, and 3 of them have been on the road, and only one of those teams is a bad team. Like, they're beating some really good teams here. Seattle and Anaheim, I think, are probably going to make the playoffs. Utah started the season off hot. And they went into that building last night and completely dominated them. I think there's a certain calm and presence with Justus in net that they don't have with Georgiev in net. And I don't know if it's a mental thing that gets the rest of the team or what, but he clearly is playing better than Georgiev right now. And they just need to continue to roll with the hot hand. And I think that's what Jared Bednar is going to do. The problem with the Avs is everything else around the goalie right now as well. And that's the thing that isn't getting talked about enough is, they're getting some really good contributions from players you cannot rely on because their forward depth is completely just out right now. So I'm not ready to make an evaluation on the Avs, whether they're great or bad or whatever, but I will tell you that Justus Annunen is the answer in net for now.
I agree with you. I think that Georgie has shown nothing through the back half of this past season and the start of this season that says that you need to continue to string out in a benefit of the doubt sense and just let him kind of settle. I think we have a pretty good idea about what he is, and Justus, albeit in a short sample size, has proven to be a little bit of a spark between net. And when I was going through the game logs and looking at the numbers, I think there may be a magic number when it comes to Justus Annunen, and that number is 25. because in his last 3 starts, Annunen has given you exactly 25 saves per start. He faced 26 shots, and 27 shots in the last 3 games. He's given 25 saves in all 3 of those games. So when you contrast that to the starts with Alexander Georgiev, he gave up way more goals, but he also faced a lot more shots, especially, I mean, he was up toward 36, 37 shots in some of those games. So my theory is, I do think Annunen gives them a confidence in net. And I think that the difference is that you're seeing on the ice is that they're playing better defense. I think that when Georgie's between the pipes, they know he has the potential to be a sieve in any given period. And that's stressful. And that puts a lot of strain on the forwards and on the offensive side to say, hey, we have to force things. We have to try to push it because we know we're going to give up 3, 4, 5, or in the case of the Vegas Golden Knights, 8 goals by the end of the game, even though that wasn't all his fault. I think that they've played better defense. They've contested better shots. And some of the defensive lapses that we saw in the first few games, whether it's Manson screening his own goalie or a lack of effort from Taves and even Makar, as great as he's been offensively, in terms of point scoring, I think that he gives them a different identity as a team. And I think you have to run with that because when the Avs won the Cup in 2021, they were built with Darcy Kemper and Frankie to win games 7-5 or 6-4. And they're not built that way, I don't think, anymore. Or if they are still built, because a lot of those components are the same, they don't have the firepower, especially not with everyone not healthy.
No, they're not going to score 7 goals a night right now. But the thing is, and this just gets forgotten about with that Cup team, is their goalies were not good, but their defense was really good. When Manson's your 5th defender and you've got, Sam Girard out there when he was healthy on your 3rd defensive pairing, like that's a really good defense. So, Bowen Byram was awesome in the playoffs. So I just think that the Avalanche have some really good defenders, and you look at the thing that they're trying to do, similar to the Nuggets in integrating new players, is a lot of players on their defensive back end, and especially with Devon Toews getting hurt early and him missing a couple games, they were integrating new parts. And I think that led to some defensive lapses because it's all communication based, particularly between the 2 defenders and the goalie, that triangle. And that was part of the Avalanche's problem. And it takes some time to settle in. I think we'll still see some problems with that moving forward, at least for the early part of the season. Like, this is October hockey. October basketball we're talking about, Richie. This is a mess. Like, it's supposed to look like a mess. Only a couple teams throughout the NBA or NHL have their ducks in a row right now. And those teams get off to hot starts and then cruise the rest of the way. Everyone else is fighting for, everything that they've got. And we expected the Avs to maybe be around 500 or just a little bit above by the time Valeri Nichushkin got back, around Thanksgiving. That's where they're headed. And if the Avs are just about 500 by the time Valeri Nichushkin comes back, and then maybe they're a handful and then Gabe comes back, let's say Gabe does come back, not counting on it, I'm just saying, let's say it does happen, they're going to be fine. Yeah. Like, that's going to be a really good team. So they just need to continue to hold water, and they've done that. They had a cataclysmic start. Now they're back to even. Cool. Stay here for a little while, and they're going to be okay.
And I think that's all the more reason why everything in my brain is pointing down the runway of just keep Annunen between the net, keep the momentum you've got going, because Lecky's coming back. Nichushkin's going to be back from this suspension. You're going to have to wait a little bit on Jonathan Drouin and Ross Colton, and Gabe's timeline is up in the air. But I would imagine if he's not coming back around Christmas, we will know that it's going to be longer well before then. So
yeah, no doubt. And Richie, what
reinforcements are coming
too is, don't forget this part about the Cup run. Darcy Kemper was not available in the Western Conference Finals, and Pavel Francouz had to be in net. Yeah. Almost every single great team in the NHL at some point in their season relies upon 2 goaltenders. Mm-hmm. So you can't lose Georgiev right now. You need him to be part of your team. Yep. You need him to figure it out. And hopefully Justus plays very well for a long time here. But at some point, Justus is going to have a bad game, and Bednar should go back to Georgiev and see what he's got after this mental reset, because the Avalanche will need both of these goaltenders at some point throughout the regular season or playoffs.
It's not lost on me either that before Georgie came here, he sat behind Shesterkin, who was one of the best goaltenders in the league at the time. And when he was called upon to act, even if it wasn't often, the skates to fill were very big. And so he's called upon here to become that guy. And it's not as easy as people think. Being a goaltender in the NHL seems insanely stressful to me, especially when you're up close. I'll never forget the first time I sat up close up on the boards and watched the game, how fast not only the skating around you is happening, but how fast that puck is moving. It feels like you're guessing more than half the time. You're just relying on instinct and having good body position. So I certainly am not going to be the armchair goaltender who says that, who's going to judge somebody for getting shelled in certain instances the way that Georgie has. But I think that if Justus Annunen can sustain at least a little bit longer of decent play and give Georgie some time to sit, recalibrate, figure it out, and come back kind of re-energized or refreshed or with a better mindset, I agree with you. I think that could pay dividends going into the season. I do want to touch on the Buffs though, because they have a chance this Saturday to clear their over/under win total from before the season and secure a bowl game of some sort. This is the end. I believe this is the end of their feline frenzy. They had back-to-back Wildcats. Now they have a Bearcat. And from here on out, it's more traditional mascots. So give me your initial impressions of the game this weekend. I believe they're just shy of a touchdown favorite. What are you thinking about the game this Saturday?
Can't forget that earlier in the season, they also played the Baylor Bears. So they've gone Bear, Cat. It's pretty confusing over there.
We need some more originality when it comes to mascots.
I think there are like 3 or 4 different Wildcats or Eagles or something that in the middle Atlantic Conference right now. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is crazy. I think the Buffs are going bowling on Saturday.
I agree.
I think that Jake Shapiro's long pin tweet of what's the biggest rivalry in sports? What's your favorite rivalry? Colorado Buffaloes versus bowl eligibility. I think I'm going to get that quote tweeted a lot on Saturday night, and it's going to be awesome. This is a big deal. Like, let's not even talk about the Dion thing. Let's not even talk about, the game for a second. Let's just talk about bowl eligibility. The Colorado Buffaloes have been bowl eligible twice since 2007. 2016, which was an incredible year led by Sefo Lufau, Phil Lindsay, Chidobe Awuzie, Shea Fields, just NFL guys everywhere on that team. Guys still in the league like Isaiah Oliver, Kello Witherspoon, just awesome team. And then in 2020, which was just a COVID season, that didn't really count.
Shortened.
So they've really been to a bowl once since 2007. They've only won a postseason game going back to 2004. Like, they haven't won a postseason game in 20 years. This is a program that historically pretty bad, had a great 20 years in the 80s, 90s, into the early 2000s, and has been atrocious since. This has been arguably the worst college football program in the country for a long time.
They were rated as such as early as 2 years ago before Prime got there. CU and CSU were both at the bottom of ESPN's Power 5 football rankings when you factored in every school.
So just to get to a bowl game means so much to people in the Boulder community like myself and so many different CU fans that have been waiting for this. So that in itself is a giant victory for Deion Sanders, accomplishing a task that only Mike McIntyre has been able to since Dan Hawkins left the program, which was very long ago now. We were talking about intramurals back then, if you do not remember. So yeah, I'm really excited about this, Richie, and I expect an awesome atmosphere. I think a lot of students even understand what this means to get to 6-2. And by the way, if you're 6-2, you're probably going to get ranked. You're probably going to get back into some of the conversations that were being held last year ridiculously, but now they're legitimate about your program. You look at the schedule moving forward for CU, and I'm sounding like Mr. Positivity over here. I'm like never like this about CU, but like, look at the schedule moving forward. Utah, you thought was going to be a really tough team. Cam Rising's out. That game does not look that tough anymore. Kansas has not turned into the team we thought they were. Oklahoma State with a Heisman winning running back potential guy like there. that's not turned into fruition. There's a real chance that if the Buffs get by Cincinnati on Saturday, they got a bye to prepare for Texas Tech and Lubbock. That's a tough game. And then after that, they could run the table going to Dallas to play in the Big 12 championship game. This is an unbelievable opportunity that's befallen the Colorado Buffaloes, and they have earned it. They are this good of a team. They truly should be 5-2. Dion will say they should be better. Nah, they've made mistakes at times. They probably deserve to have a couple losses on their record, but they still deserve to be in the conversation, and they're putting themselves in that conversation.
I love it. Well, I can't wait to see it. I'm going to be fascinated if they can run the table or if they can be kind of right on the cusp of that expanded playoff format, how much the conversation turns to will the College Football Playoff Committee, who we can all agree is not a Boy Scout committee that just wants to put the 4 best teams in there.
It's just ESPN.
Yep. So I'm going to be fascinated to see how those conversations turn to with how many eyeballs Dion brings and how much money he's potentially worth in this program and the attention that they have. Is that a potential tiebreaker to sneak them in on the back end of a playoff if they're not an automatic bid and all of that? I can't wait for it. I agree with you. I think they clinch a bowl game this Saturday, and I'm going to be excited to watch. A couple of quick things on the way out. Dodgers, Yankees, World Series starts tonight. If we're going to fast forward way ahead, we'll get it in before the series starts. Which 50-plus home run hitter is going to be raising a championship trophy at the end of the series? Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani?
Shohei Ohtani hits an RBI double in Game 7 to put the Dodgers through. That's what I'm saying. This series,
it's Richie, like a Jeter move.
I've been waiting for this World Series my whole life. And there are a lot of people that'll say, boo, it's Dodgers, Yankees. We want the small markets. No, man. And I'd love for the Rockies to be there. I'd love for, my family are Cub fans. I'm not, but I'd love for the Cubs to be there just for my family. I'd love for a lot of these different teams to be there. I loved it when the Royals and the Rangers were going to the World Series. That was cool. But in my lifetime, we have not had a World Series of this magnitude of Dodgers and Yankees, and they have met 15 plus times in the World Series. And this is going to determine an ultimate champion in baseball. Both of these teams truly deserve to be here. And it is 2 absolute superstars in the sport. A guy in Aaron Judge who never in baseball had there been a guy his size play the game positionally. Only pitchers have been that size. And now you have that athlete roaming center field at Yankee Stadium and hitting 50 home runs. In a guy and Shohei Ohtani doing things that have not been done ever in baseball and also never been done since Babe Ruth. An incredible athlete who's lived up to every single bit of hype we've had for him and more so. So I cannot wait to watch this World Series. It features some of the greatest players in baseball. Juan Soto, who has the eye of Barry Bonds. Like, there are attributes in these 2 teams and moments of these 2 teams' players, whether you go back to, Freddie Freeman winning it for the Braves or, Mookie Betts and what he did in Boston. These are some of the biggest names in baseball battling each other on the biggest stage. And I think we're going to see this do massive TV numbers. I'm personally going to be stopping everything I do, even if I'm covering the Buffs game on Saturday night. Well, I am covering the Buffs game, but when I'm covering the Buffs game Saturday night and it's the 7th inning and Aaron Judge is coming up to bat, I'm not watching the Buffs game. I'm watching Aaron Judge bat. This is going to be a cultural moment because baseball has not mattered on this stage for a long time in America. And I'm very excited as a big baseball fan.
I could not have said it any more eloquently than you just laid it out. The best compliment I can give it is that general ineptitude and Rockies baseball has crushed me into being a casual baseball fan. And I could not be more excited to watch two of the 3 biggest markets with 2 of the 3 biggest payrolls with a VIP list of stars that lasts more than a page and the firepower that's going to exist in these 2 batting orders. I could not ask for more. I can't wait to watch it. One last thing on the way out. I'm going to show you NFL Network's predictions for the Broncos game this Sunday. You tell me, are the Broncos headed for a potential trap game? Because anytime I see this many minds and this many people unanimously agreeing with something, it really makes me want to zag where they're zigging.
Name a Panthers wide receiver who's going to play.
That's a good point.
No,
Xavier Legette. I think
Xavier
Deontay Johnson's out. Yep.
Dude, I was at a bar in Berkeley up north in Denver a couple weeks ago, and there was a guy wearing a Xavier Legette jersey, and I just went up to him, bought him a little soda, bought him a little pop, gave him a hug, and I said, I feel so bad for you, man. Like, this is really, really rough for you.
And in full transparency, I wouldn't have been able to name Xavier Legette if he hadn't gone viral throughout the draft process and the start of this season for sounding like Farmer Fran from The Waterboy. So that's a little bit of a cheat on my part. I do think the Broncos are going to win. I would expect them to win big, but I'm telling you, my spidey sense is up that if we're coming in here on Monday and it's an, oh my God, how did the Broncos just lose to the Carolina Panthers? I'm not going to say I didn't see a world where that could happen.
You know what the Buffs and Broncos will have in common on Monday?
They'll both clear their over-under win totals from the start of the season.
And they'll both be 6-2.
I love it. All right, Jake. Well, there's so much to look forward to. Can't wait to break it all down. And we'll get to see how right our predictions were coming in on Monday. Thanks for hanging out with me, man.
Yep, can't wait. And I cannot wait to watch the Rapids on one screen, the Dodgers and Yankees on one
MLS
screen.
Cup, baby.
All the while, I've got the Buffs right in front of me Saturday night. That's going to be a fun little experience down at Folsom that I've got. And thank God I've got good Wi-Fi there.
One of the most eclectic sports fans I've ever met, Jake Shapiro. I love it. All I want is more of it. And we'll touch base on it next week. Thank you for hanging out with me. And for everybody else, we'll see you next week. Get back to work.